Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us again on our fourth of our five-part series. We're going to speak about the fire element today and its flavor, bitter. And joining us again is Chef Phil.
Good morning.
And Ashley.
Hi, everybody.
And today's guest is Nikki Muna, who is a yogic food chef and a very dear friend of mine. Who I always go to when I have questions about spices. And so she's joining us to give us a little information on more of a yogic food tradition on flavors. So let me talk a little bit about the bitter taste and its relationship to the fire element. The fire element is related to the heart, and it's about interpersonal connections, that deep heart-to-heart connections. And I had actually asked my teacher once, why is bitterness related to the heart? Why couldn't it be sweet if it's all about heart-to-heart connection? And he said, well, it's because of the bitterness that would make you realize that the sweetness in life. It's the balancing aspect of the flavors. And so I had a patient of mine who actually emailed and asked, why in the 5 flavors of Chinese element do we have all of these flavors that are a little weird and wonky, right? We had pungent, we had sour, and now we have bitter. And I said, it's because its tradition was coming from a medicinal standpoint. And it was there to help balance things out within our internal climates and just also within our sort of social and interpersonal connections. So with that being said, Chef Phil, take it away.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to my kitchen once again. So today I chose the ingredient chocolate, bitter chocolate. And chocolate is represented in a lot of different percentages of taste as far as bitterness to sweetness. And normally the reason why you taste a chocolate that happens to be bitter because it has a higher percentage of the cacao in it. So this is a 70% chocolate that I have here today. And that's probably as bitter as you want to go when you're making a dessert or something that can be presented well to your palate. Normally in pastry, a lot of pastry chefs will use 55% chocolate, percentage of chocolate with most of their recipes because it has a very good balance to it. But when you want to get that bitterness, that flavor, I think you have to go a little higher. But again, we will balance it, adding just a little bit of sugar to this recipe as far as a percentage, because you definitely want it to be palatable. So
and is this like baking chocolate, Phil, or is it just regular chocolate?
In the supermarket, they'll call it baking chocolate, but bitter chocolate is basically only used for baking. But ironically enough, we are not baking today. We're going to show you how to make a chocolate pate. You can call it a chocolate terrine, depending on the mold that you use. I like calling it a chocolate pate. This particular recipe allows itself to be a dessert, but also maybe a breakfast item. I normally serve it with some fresh fruit. I previously used to make this in my restaurant with a orange compote flavored with a little saffron. I like mixing spices, especially into desserts. A lot of times people don't normally do that, but I think it blends a really great flavor. And it kind of gives you that hint of surprise. You don't expect it. So if you were eating a orange compote with a little bit of basil and saffron in it and you had it with a bitter chocolate, it kind of gives you that wow factor. And that's what I kind of look for when I do things like this. But this is really simple to make at home. It'll take you all of, let me say 5-10 minutes to make. It takes a little longer to set before you can eat it. But it's a simple recipe, and I have the finished product here, and I'm going to show you actually how we can make this into a breakfast item as well. So I have my bitter chocolate. I have some butter. I have 8 ounces of bitter chocolate, 70%. I have 4 ounces of heavy cream, 1 ounce of butter. I have 2 ounces of egg yolk, and you want to use pasteurized egg yolk when you're doing a recipe like this. They do sell it frozen in the supermarket. Sometimes you could also find pasteurized eggs in a shell now. But you want to do that because at the temperatures that you're cooking, chocolate melts at 90 degrees, and that's kind of in the danger zone if you're using something that has protein in it. And eggs definitely have the protein in it, and you also want to make sure that it's safe to eat. Same thing if you were making a mayonnaise, same principle. And then we're going to put a little rum extract, but we're going to use fresh aged rum that I got from the Caribbean. So that's what we're gonna do here today. So really, really simple. I grab my pot, okay? I take my cream, I throw my cream into the pot, and I'm gonna put it on the fire real quick. We're gonna get that nice and hot, and we're gonna make something called an anglaise out of this recipe. What we're gonna do is get the cream hot. We're gonna add the butter and the chocolate, and we're gonna melt that in so the chocolate melts down. It's almost like what they call a ganache in the industry. It's a chocolate ganache. So it's really, really simple. And then I have this recipe actually calls for 2 ounces of powdered sugar, 10x sugar. The reason why you want to use 10x sugar is that it's not granulated. It melts and it incorporates much more quickly. And you don't have to worry about having that graininess. A grain sugar would probably take a higher heat to melt than the 90 degrees. So therefore, you want to make sure that you have something that will incorporate into the chocolate rapidly. And then we're going to fold our eggs in, and then pretty much we're done. But while the cream's heating, what we want to do is we want to make sure the rest of our mise en place is ready. I have this little olive dish I decided to use as the mold. So what I do is I run it under water just to wet it a little bit, because I'm going to line it with a little bit of plastic wrap so that my chocolate will be easy to pull out later on.
Ashley, can you talk a little bit about the nutritional value of chocolate?
Yes, so chocolate actually is really high in antioxidants, and antioxidants is what the body uses to fight free radical damage or things that harm the body. So it has a really great benefit for protecting against heart disease, helping with brain health, and it also affects our mood. So there are nutrients in the cacao, in the chocolate, that helps us feel better. So it really is true, when you eat chocolate and you get that kind of euphoric feeling, that's a chemical response where dark chocolate especially helps to release endorphins, which makes you feel more happy or excited or giddy feeling. And so that's one reason a lot of people really love, eating chocolate, is you get that feeling afterwards.
So while this is melting and still warm, I'm going to add my eggs. I don't really have to temper them because it's not that hot. If this was a really, really a higher temperature as far as the cream and the chocolate, I would have to temper my eggs. And when I say by tempering it, you would pour a little of the liquid into your egg yolks to get it a temperature where it would incorporate very well and it wouldn't scramble the egg, wouldn't cook the egg. But being that chocolate only melts at about 90 degrees, it's pretty much all there. And
so you're just whipping it right now.
That's pretty much it. So, well, actually, I'm folding everything in. And now the sugar's going to melt. We're going to add a little bit of our rum.
Oh, it looks delicious.
It does look delicious already. So I'm going to speak a little bit about the bitter taste.
About half an ounce of rum.
First, let's get the rum in there.
Yeah.
Yum. So the taste of bitter foods are generally cooling in Oriental medicine and encourage the contraction and the descending of energy. And the bitter taste is related to the heart system and the nervous system in terms of a Western idea of biology. And part of that is because most bitter flavors will have things like Ashley spoke about, flavonoids. It's also got alkaloids. And these affect the nervous system. And they also tend to have something called glucosides, which also affect the circulatory system. So the physiological connection of the bitter taste to the heart, we're also speaking about the sort of cardiovascular connection also, because foods with this flavor have those specific chemicals in it. As the saying once goes in Chinese medicine, bitterness helps the heart because it believes that bitter foods can leach out and dry and solidify yin, things that are sort of material and sort of stuck in our bodies. So again, I relate to that to like plaque that's running through our veins. So with that being said, chocolate does not technically come from the region of Asia where Nikki and I came from and where our traditions of food as medicine comes from. But bitterness has always been a flavor that is medicinal and incorporated. So Nikki, could you speak a little bit about that concept of bitter as a medicinal flavoring?
So I essentially kind of, let's start from talking about yoga food and how kind of that is classified. So the whole idea is that the foods that we eat should be digested very easily to stay rid of diseases. So yoga actually classifies food in three categories. It's sattvic food, rajasic food, and tamasic food. So sattvic foods are foods that digest very easily. Everything that's natural fruits and vegetables and grains, spices that are therapeutic. And then you have rajasic foods, are foods that, don't digest that easily. So for example, I'd say, certain ingredients like chickpeas, when your food is extremely spicy, or fish, probably, all of those things come within the Rajasic category. And then the Tamasic category are foods that take a lot of energy for our body to digest. So meat, foods that are very oily, very salty. So everything that kind of is also not moderate, but kind of used in extreme. That's the basic idea. But I think chocolate as a natural ingredient, I would say I would classify it as sattvic foods because it is a natural ingredient. It is something that comes from the earth and is digested easily.
And Nikki, what traditionally would you use in terms of spices or foods that sort of target that bitter quality in food that you're going to want?
I'd say, all different spices have different kind of effects for your health. So it's things like turmeric is an anti-inflammation. Cardamom will help you again, excite your mood and make you feel better. Red chili powder is good for consumption of, in moderation, of course, in kind of reducing fat, helping your body to digest easily. Mustard seeds, cumin seeds. So there are all of these different spices that help in different aspects. So mustard seeds might help with blood pressure. Cumin seeds help with, if you have headaches. So all of these different spices help in different things. But I think in terms of chocolate, I'm sure, Phil, you've used mint and you've used cardamom, and those are kind of the spices that go along, like you mentioned earlier. And I think I've seen some chocolates out there even with red chili powder, which is unusual.
Yeah.
But I'm sure you
that when I make the breakfast item, in my cocoa mixture, I have some chili powder in it as well. So therefore, it gives it a little hint of heat.
Exactly. So I think just getting innovative with how you kind of incorporate these elements in your food, I think is also, it adds different flavors to it. So it kind of makes it more exciting.
Absolutely.
And so, so bitter herbs also have a cleansing action, and these cleansing actions, we talk about, like, again, the flavonoids, the alkaloids, the glucosides, and they really are powerful antioxidants and chemicals in our bodies that does help with anti-inflammation and actually act as an antimicrobial in our system. So, in this time of pandemics and stuff, eating things like this is so good for us. If you're going to gain that COVID-15, you might as well have some of that dark chocolate pate. Ashley, could you speak a little bit more about bitterness? I think you had mentioned a very interesting comment about coffee. my contribution to the bitter flavor this morning.
Yeah, so if you think about it, coffee comes from a bean. So there's a coffee bean and a cacao bean. Both come from similar regions of South America. So coffee and chocolate both have been very rich in the South American tradition of the ancient cultures. And chocolate specifically was even used as money and currency at one point because of its power during the Aztec and like Mayan cultures would use chocolate quite a bit. And so it's really been known, and I find it really fascinating that even speaking of whether it's the ancient traditions of Chinese medicine, Ayurvedic medicine, South American traditions, we knew how to use these foods in this. The flavors is what told our body what was in it. So the bitter flavor was telling the body chemically what's there. Now we can do the science and look and see, oh, so those are high in flavonoids. Those are high in manganese. It's high in magnesium. Chocolate has a good amount of iron and also copper in it. It's all this stuff. It's coming from the earth because it's, you know, coming from a natural source of the bean. And the bitterness is what tells our body what's inside. And like you said, we need that balance of bitter, sour, sweet, things like that. And right now our culture is so kind of sweet obsessed. We forget that bitter is one of the most nutrient dense flavors of our culture, of our food system. And unfortunately, we don't eat enough of it because it is such a strong flavor and we've gotten away from it being part of our regular system of eating. It's more stand out as a flavor. But for the most part, for most of, you know, human evolution, we are eating way more bitter foods. And even the foods today were more bitter than they are now. They've been, you know, through agriculture and things like that, they've been mild down in their bitterness. But that bitter flavor helps with stimulating the liver, digestion. It helps us in so many different ways that we really want to try to embrace that bitterness for health reasons.
Great. So how's our chocolate pate going there, mister?
So just to show you, I'm going to show you how you can do it in different ways. We have it in the mold that I chose, which was an olive dish. I'll put this in the refrigerator and we'll let it sit there for about an hour to set, maybe a little longer. But you could also, if you had like a flexi pan, you can make little ones so that you can just pop them in your mouth later on, just for a little treat. So there's a lot of different ways that you can actually mold it. But what I'm going to show you right now is a little breakfast item. So what I did was I toasted a piece of country bread that I made this week and a little bit of olive oil, toasted it up. We're going to take a little bit of pate, and I would let this pate sit out about a good 45 minutes before you served it. You could actually freeze it. It really freezes well, but you could spread this on a piece of country bread.
So this reminds me of Nutella and how that's used in European cultures as a common breakfast food.
Not as sweet. It's going to be that bitter texture. And then what I did was I cut up some berries, and you can just lay some berries out onto this, okay, just like this.
What a great alternative to drinking the coffee in the morning. A lot of people don't realize that we reach for coffee because of that bitter taste, regardless of how much sugar or milk they put in. It's that bitterness that congeals us, right? And gets us ready to go.
Yep, and the coffee is also energizing and caffeine, and it has the caffeine in it. Chocolate actually has a cousin molecule to the caffeine that actually stimulates us, but it doesn't have as much addiction flavor, you know, consequences, and it also has a more like stabilizing energy. So chocolate is something that instead of a caffeine, like coffee, if you have trouble with that, like I know caffeine isn't good for me and my body gets too jittery, having a chocolate or a cacao drink or additive into my smoothie, something like cacao in the smoothie, gives me more sustained and focused energy.
And Chef Nikki actually has in one of her books a yogurt cooler in which you could put a little bit of that dark cacao powder into it in the morning, or a little bit of cardamom. I'm going to show the book and then I'll send over the recipe with her permission. But this is what I was thinking of, Nikki.
Yes, this is a great idea. And it has a bit of cumin in it. So I think the cacao powder and cumin would go really well together. Yeah.
Exactly, right? I love the cumin and cacao together.
Because in India, that is traditional. They drink this in the morning to help with their digestion and help to get started with the day. So it's a perfect recipe to kind of include in, you know. with yogurt. So makes sense.
So just to finish up, instead of putting a little 10x sugar or powdered sugar to make it look a little prettier, what I do is I just dusted a little cocoa and cayenne mixture together to give you a different hint of spice to it. But basically, this is how you can present it in a bistro. It's really easy. It's nice and crisp. Chocolate's bitter.
Oh, my mouth is watering.
Me too.
And it's a great
So good.
breakfast item. Not sweet at all, but the sweetness of the natural berry balanced the bitter chocolate.
It's like every time you make something, we're all sitting here going, ugh.
I know, I can't wait till we can do these in person and then all like
know.
step in like
Oh
a
my
morning
God,
show
you
and get to try
taste
it.
them.
You know, I've been the only one that's really been able to eat on all these videos that we've been doing, but
It's so unfair.
I can tell you it's very good.
Yeah.
Yeah, it looks it. And I love this idea of the sweetness, the dark chocolate in the morning. What a great way to come out of slumber and break our fast with something that reminds us about the sweet and bitterness of life, and how when we wake up, one of the first things that we want to do is greet our loved ones, right? So making that heart-to-heart connection after slumbering and going off to dreamland, or you know, according to Chinese medicine, our spirit comes in and actually settles into the heart to rejuvenate. So you know, bitter chocolate spread for breakfast, I think that might be my new thing. And the yogurt cooler with the cocoa powder, that I'm definitely trying, Nikki. Thank you, everyone, for being here. Thank you, Chef, for, you know, always creating such mouth-watering and unbelievably like jealousness in my heart for everything that you've made. And thank you, Chef Nikki, for coming and really introducing people to this idea of the yogic foods in the 3 categories. This is Chef Nikki's, one of her books, Serene Cuisine. She also has a second book called My Yoga Kitchen. And Ashley, always thank you for such wonderful wisdom and research that you put into this. And
thanks, Leah, for having me.
Oh gosh, it's always so much fun with all of you guys together. Chef Phil, have one more bite for us.
Do I really have to? I mean, it's such a difficult job. But
I know. I feel for you so badly. Just like, ugh.
And you know, the key to this also, cooking's fun. It brings us all together. But the recipes are so simple that you're able to follow them. You can prepare this ahead of time. You can invite guests over for the evening, or like I said, even for breakfast, if you have some people over for breakfast. And you can really enjoy it. And it's simple, and you can enjoy your company, because that's what it's all about, sitting around a table and really enjoying each other and enjoying the food as well. So, bon appetit.
Yay. And, you know, I think it's always, again, I'll bring out, it's been interesting that all the recipes we've picked are alternative ways of cooking, that it's not just over a fire or in a baked oven, that these are all different traditional methods of preserving and preparing foods to bring out the most nutritional value in them. So, you know, I love that this was a minimal cook kind of recipe, just like your previous recipe, which was the gravlax and the ceviche. And we did our famous Korean kimchi recipe. So thank you so much for introducing us to different styles of cooking.
Fantastic. I enjoy it.
All right. Thanks, everyone. And we'll see you next week for our last element, which is the flavor of sweet.
And you might think we're doing a dessert, but I don't think we're going that way.
Oh, yeah? Okay, well, you know, I'm ready for the surprise.
We might just take some natural ingredients that have sweetness to them, some vegetables that are grown every day in our backyards. And we'll be able to make you a nice little meal with that.
Oh, all right. I'm definitely driving over to your house.
Great.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone. Have a great day.